The sun hung like a burning coal in the sky, scorching the cracked earth of northern Burkina Faso. Amadou Diallo squinted against the glare, his shadow stretching long and thin across the dusty ground as he guided his cattle toward the dwindling watering hole. The dry season had been cruel this year. The cows' ribs pressed against their hides, their lowing sounds more like sighs of resignation than the lively calls of healthy animals. Amadou's own stomach growled, but he ignored it. The last of the millet had gone to his children that morning. He'd told Fatima, his wife, he wasn't hungry. Life had always been hard in their village, a cluster of mud brick homes surrounded by thorny acacia trees. For generations, the Diallo family had herded cattle, surviving on the milk they sold and the occasional sale of a cow during festivals or emergencies. But lately, it felt like the earth itself was turning against them. Droughts came more frequently. The middlemen who bought their milk at the weekly market paid less each season, blaming distant problems like global prices and transport costs, words that meant nothing to Amadou as he watched his children's cheeks grow hollow. Some mornings, he'd find Fatima kneeling in the dirt, whispering prayers to the ancestors, her hands shaking as she poured offerings of water into the parched soil. Then, one afternoon, hope arrived on 4 wheels. Amadou was mending a torn fishing net, a side job he'd taken up when milk sales faltered, when the rumble of an engine cut through the village's sleepy silence. Children sprinted past his hut, shouting, "Truck! Truck!" He followed, curiosity overriding his weariness. A white government pickup, its sides stamped with peeling green letters reading Ministry of Agriculture, idled in the central square. A crowd gathered as a young man in khakis jumped out, unfolding a metal easel and slapping up a poster showing a gleaming white building surrounded by cows. "People of Kossou," the man barked, clapping his hands for attention. "Captain Ibrahim Traoré has not forgotten you. A new dairy factory now operates in Ouagadougou. Bring your milk daily, no spoilage, no middlemen. Fair prices paid instantly." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. An old woman spat into the dirt. "Lies," she muttered. "Last year they promised solar pumps. Where are they?" But Amadou stepped forward, studying the poster. The factory in the image looked impossibly modern, like something from the television his neighbor sometimes watched in the tea shack. "How far?" he asked. 200 kilometers south. Trucks collect milk daily from drop points, but you can deliver directly for higher pay," the man said, handing out leaflets Amadou couldn't read. That night, the village buzzed. Families huddled around cooking fires, debating. Some called it a trick. "The government wants to steal our cows," argued Musa, a hot-tempered young herder. Others, like Amadou's aging friend Bakari, saw a flicker of possibility. "My daughter's baby needs medicine," Bakari said quietly. "I'd walk to Mali if it helped." At dawn, Amadou and Bakari pooled their milk into dented jerry cans, loaded them onto Bakari's donkey cart, and set off for the factory. The journey took 11 hours. Twice, the cart's wheel lodged in deep ruts, forcing them to unload the cans and heave the wood and metal back onto the road. By midday, the milk sloshed worryingly warm in the containers. Amadou's throat tightened. What if it spoiled? What if this was all a waste? But when they arrived, a scene unfolded that felt like a dream. The factory stood at the edge of the city, its walls painted with cheerful murals of cows and smiling farmers. Workers in hairnets and white coats rushed about, waving trucks into orderly lines. A woman with a clipboard approached Amadou, tested a drop of his milk with a strange device, then nodded. "Good quality. 30 liters?" She counted out bills into his palm, more money than he'd held in months. Bakari stared at his own payment, tears cutting tracks through the dust on his face. "My grandchild. She'll live," he whispered. Back in Kossou, change came slowly at first, then all at once. Within weeks, a dozen families began daily milk runs to the factory. Young men like Musa, once the loudest skeptics, built makeshift cooling sheds using insulated straw mats, preserving milk overnight for the morning trips. The village elder, Ngolo, who'd once dismissed Amadou as a fool chasing mirages, now presided over meetings about buying a shared truck. Even the children felt the shift. Fewer disappeared during school hours to scavenge for wild berries. Instead, they hunched over notebooks, practicing sums. One evening, Fatima placed a plate of grilled fish and okra stew in front of Amadou. "Bought it at Fati's new stall," she said, pride warming her voice. Fati, a widow who'd previously survived by washing clothes, now sold fried dough and vegetables near the well, her startup money earned from milk sales. Yet Amadou's mind wouldn't rest. Each time he touched the factory's crisp bills, guilt pricked him. We take, but do we thank? In his father's time, when a man received a blessing, he traveled to thank the chief. Captain Traoré was no traditional chief, but wasn't he a leader who'd done more for Kossou than any chief ever had? "I must go to him," Amadou announced at dinner. Fatima nearly dropped the water jug. "To Ouagadougou? You've never even been to Dorrytown. Then I'll learn the way." The journey tested every ounce of his resolve. Amadou hitched rides on produce trucks crammed with sacks of onions, their sharp scent stinging his eyes. He slept in roadside ditches, using his robe as a blanket. Outside Koudougou, a band of teenagers on motorcycles surrounded him, demanding money. Heart pounding, he handed over half his savings, but hid the rest in his sandal. "Take this and leave," he said, staring them down. To his surprise, they did. In the capital, chaos overwhelmed him. Ouagadougou's streets swarmed with motorbikes, street vendors hawking SIM cards, and girls in school uniforms giggling over smartphones. A shopkeeper laughed when Amadou asked directions to the presidential palace. "You think they let farmers in there? Go home, old man." But Amadou had herded stubborn cattle for 40 years. He wasn't easily turned. For 3 days, he camped under a neem tree near the palace gates, surviving on roasted groundnuts and sips from a public tap. Guards shooed him away each morning. Each afternoon, he returned. On the 4th day, a young soldier tossed him a mango. "Why do you bother?" he asked. "If your mother fed your children, wouldn't you thank her?" Amadou replied. The soldier blinked, then walked away. Captain Ibrahim Traoré noticed the old man on his way to a cabinet meeting. "Who's that?" he asked his aide, nodding at the figure in the faded blue robe standing stiffly by the gate, staff in hand. "Some farmer. Says he wants to thank you for the dairy project. Been here all week." Traoré frowned. His security team hated unscheduled stops, but something in the man's posture, the unyielding straightness of his spine, reminded him of his own grandfather. "Pull over." The SUV's window slid down. Up close, the captain looked younger than Amadou expected. His beret tilted at a confident angle. "You risk sunstroke out here, Papa. What's so important?" Amadou's rehearsed words fled. Instead, he spoke from the gut. "My village, we were ghosts before. Now my daughter reads books. My neighbor's son survived malaria because we bought medicine. The factory, it's not just milk, it's life." Traoré listened, then did something unexpected. He stepped out of the car. Soldiers tensed, but the captain waved them off. "You're the first farmer to come here," he said. "Others send complaints. Why?" "A tree grows when you water the roots, not the leaves," Amadou said, quoting his father. "You watered our roots." The captain's stern expression softened. "Tell me, what else does your village need?" Amadou returned to Kossou with more than stories. A week after his meeting, engineers arrived to drill a borehole, ending the women's daily 4-mile walk for water. By the next dry season, solar panels powered the cooling sheds. But the greatest change wasn't in things. It was in the people. Musa, the former skeptic, now led a cooperative of young herders, negotiating feed prices with regional suppliers. Bakari's granddaughter, Amina, thrived on formula bought with milk money. She now toddled after the calves, her laughter mingling with their bleats. And Fatima, her soap-making business booming, secretly saved coins in a clay pot labeled Aicha's Education. Years later, when journalists visited Kosu to document the dairy factory miracle, they expected to find gleaming machinery and government posters. Instead, they found a village transformed by quiet dignity. A health clinic staffed by a nurse who'd once been a milk seller, a schoolhouse built with cooperative profits, and an old herder named Amadou who still rose at dawn to tend his cows. "Why do you still work?" a reporter asked, gesturing at Amadou's calloused hands. "Haven't you earned rest?" Amadou smiled, watching his grandson chase a goat through the green shoots of a millet field. "Rain had come early this year. The factory gave us money," he said, "but it gave us something better too, tomorrows." As the camera clicked, capturing the weathered lines of his face, Amadou thought of the captain's final words that day in Ouagadougou. "This is your victory, not mine." Perhaps that was the greatest magic of the factory. It hadn't just paid them, it had reminded them they were worth paying. In Ouagadougou, Captain Traore kept a photo on his desk. An old herder and a young soldier turned president, standing side by side in the dust. Visitors often asked about it. "Who's that man?" they'd say. Traore always answered the same way. "The reason we build